Our second reading this morning comes from Matthew's Gospel in chapter 5, verses 21 through 37. And Jesus is continuing the teaching he started with the Beatitudes. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment." But I say to you, if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, "You fool," you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or your sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into hell. It was also said, "Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce." But I say to you that anyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard it said that to those of ancient times, "You shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you have made to the Lord." But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let your answer be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It's great to be back with you again today on this busy day in the life of your church. We will be having a lot of time together today, and it will be wonderful for me. I hope for you as well. I have to say before I begin, I've never preached using that Matthew text. It's a very difficult text, certainly, and shows very much the time in which it was written, but it shows that our decisions have consequences, which is what I'm going to be talking about in part. So, have you ever heard of the Bernese mountain trap? I hadn't until preparing for this sermon today. And it goes like this. A coconut is chained to a stake, and there's a small hole inside the coconut that contains some rice. A monkey notices that rice and, of course, wants to get it to eat it. And the monkey places its hand in the coconut's hole, and then making a fist, it grasps the rice. Now you know what's coming next. Unfortunately, the monkey realizes there's no way to get that hand out while his fist is clenched, because it just isn't going to fit through the hole no matter what he does. So the monkey now faces a dilemma. Release that fistful of rice and lose the food, or be unable to move anywhere as long as that rice is firmly grasped. The monkey must decide which is preferable, freedom or food. Both of our scriptures this morning talk about choices. Moses outlines the choice the Hebrews have to make between life and death, blessing and curses. The people need to choose whether they will faithfully follow God, observing all of God's commandments, and loving God. This means if they do this, they will be choosing life. However, if the people's hearts are turned away and they are led astray to bow down before other gods, they will be choosing death. And these are Moses' final words to the Hebrews, spoken as they stand on the cusp of the promised land. Next, he will pass on leadership to Joshua, whom God has chosen to bring the people into this land God promised to them. Moses reminds them of the covenant that they have with God and assures them that God will be faithful, but they too must be faithful to that covenant, thus choosing life. This choice seems to be fairly cut and dry. We are reminded of the choices that parents offer to their children when they are small. If you pull the cat's tail, the cat will likely scratch or even bite you. If you touch the stove when it is hot, you will get burned. If you pinch or hit someone, a sibling or a playmate, chances are you're going to get hit or pinched in return. It's an if-then kind of choice. If you do this, this will happen. The Matthew text, as I said, is a continuation of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and he speaks of choices that have consequences, many of them sounding very dire. If you choose to be angry, there are costs. The price of holding on to that anger increases the longer it is embraced. And so Jesus urges his followers to let go of any anger and resolve any differences that they have with others quickly. So if we return to that metaphor of parents and children, the choices like the ones that Jesus offers are more complicated. If a teenager knows that a friend is doing something dangerous, what is the right thing to do? Should loyalty to a friend outweigh telling on that friend? Both choices have consequences. The friend could be hurt, possibly seriously, if that dangerous behavior continues. However, telling on a friend could mean the loss of that friend, possibly a whole group of friends, and possibly being ostracized entirely. The choices really are far less cut and dried in the mind of that teenager as parents try to work through with their child. These days, many congregations are facing difficult decisions that are far from cut and dried. Attendance has not bounced back. Now that COVID restrictions have been largely rescinded, people have developed new habits in the last 3 years. Some are content or feel it necessary, and we respect that, to be worshiping online on a Sunday morning. Others have new habits entirely that no longer include worship in their lives. Consequently, many churches find their financial support has suffered. Deficit budgets seem to be the new normal in so many churches today. Now, none of the choices presented by this new normal seem very good. These are some of the options that I know in working with churches and having served one very recently myself. These are some of those options that churches are having to face and to decide what to do. For instance, you decide to have a part-time staff to reduce expenses, or figure out how you live with one less person on your staff. Those consequences seem pretty obvious to those of us who remain faithful to a church? How do we get along with fewer people, or with people giving less time? So, do you find other churches who might be looking for a church home because they don't have one and they are growing? Sharing space can be a life-giving option, but it can also mean compromises that are hard to navigate. We all know how different worship can be in different churches. And are there even acceptable compromises that allow two congregations to share a sanctuary, scheduling sometimes being the least of those compromises? Perhaps you look for other tenants that could share your building, hence increasing your revenue in that way. Again, there can be some complications around sharing space. Things are going to change. And we all know change is hard, no matter what that change is. Another choice could be to close altogether. On the surface, this does not seem like a choice that offers life. How can it? Well, it can, but it is not an easy road. It involves thinking in terms of a legacy that is faithful to God's commandments, that shows God's love. Yet, it is being lived out beyond the context of a congregation. Doing so recognizes that death can allow for new life. But today, in this church, we are ordaining and installing new deacons and elders and commissioning trustees. These people are choosing to answer God's call to service and ministry. And as a congregation, you have chosen these folks because you recognize that God has called them. And together you have chosen life for this congregation in this time and in this place. And the leaders of this congregation, those whom you have chosen, will grapple with decisions that have consequences. Perhaps they will find themselves facing something like a Burmese monkey trap and some of the challenges that they will confront. They will need the congregation's support and prayers, and God will guide them as they continue to choose life. For God is steadfast and faithful. So trust in God that you, as you have been encouraged to do by Moses and by Jesus, God will be with you as you make difficult decisions and weigh the consequences of each option. God will be with you in joy as well. When those decisions, perhaps a reaction, but it's the right one, and you know it because God has given it to you. In choosing life, you will probably be stretched to reimagine new life that will take you into the future. And in choosing life, you embrace all the possibilities that God has in store for this community and for each one of you. In Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, God said, "I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" God chooses to do new things that bring new life. May we recognize and hold on to these new things, even when doing so is challenging, because there appear to be no good options. To God be all honor and glory now and forever. Amen.